The film opens in Egypt, where a group of special forces enter a building to catch a robot named Mousa. As soon as they get inside, they quickly identify the robot, which has a countdown timer on its chest linked to multiple gas tanks. The senior police officer orders everyone else to leave the area, but just then, the whole room explodes in flames. Meanwhile, we see a young man by the name of Yahai being beaten and questioned by his professor Faris on his role in the development of Mousa. Faris demands an explanation from Yahai regarding the events that brought him to this situation. The scene then shifts to Yahai in his university a few weeks earlier. During class, he has a conversation with his best friend Rika about their project to modify a car. But seeing this, the professor becomes irritated and right away summons Yahai to the board to answer the question. However, Yahai successfully comes up with a solution that differs from what Faris had previously taught, saying that his approach is quicker and more effective. However, Faris gets offended that his student is smarter than him, so he humiliates the poor guy and kicks him out of the class. Yahai is a quiet and reserved person, therefore he walks away without saying anything. Next, Yahai is walking down the hallway when he runs into a man who then begins to bully him. It's revealed that Yahai has trouble speaking effectively since he has certain mental health issues. Just then, Rika appears and defends him from the bullies, and a few moments later, we see that Yahai likes a girl named Mariam, but he's afraid to confess his love to her. He secretly cares about her but stays quiet in her presence. We are then introduced to Yahai's father, who is a retired engineer and now a watchmaker. He tells his father everything that happened with the school bullies and how Mariam witnessed it all. However, his father comforts Yahai by admitting that he too went through similar things when he was younger. Then they decide to visit the little hut they own, where they used to hang out when Yahai was younger. There, a man named Nasir appears and demands to know where his wife is. It turns out that his wife is a maid at Yahai's house, but she ran away because of his abusive behavior. So Yahai's father refuses to reveal her location to protect her. Upon hearing this, Nasir leaves from there and threatens to return with vengeance. Yahai then shows his father his new invention, a robot named Mousa. Mousa is revealed to be named after Yahai's stillborn older brother. The robot has been trained to respond to Yahai's ideas using an artificial virtual reality interface that is directly attached to his spinal cord. His father is surprised by this and tells him that he should sell it in a children's store and profit from it. At that moment, Mariam arrives at the house, but Yahai stands up and walks out without saying anything. However, his father invites her to stay, and as they sit down, he inquires whether he loves Yahai, to which Mariam does not reply. She reveals that the first time she met Yahai was when she asked to borrow his headphones for a piano lesson. Mariam says she tried to return the headphones, but no one knew who Yahai was, which made her think he didn't have any friends. After she leaves, Yahai talks to his father about her and claims that Mariam goes out with a much more attractive guy than him. However, his father advises him to be brave and approach her anyway. Moments later, their talk is cut short by the arrival of Nasir and his men, who are armed and out for vengeance on Yahai's father. The thugs break into the house and attack the man, knocking him to the ground while Yahai cowardly peers from the kitchen doorway. They then steal everything valuable and set fire to the house. After the men leave, Yahai instantly calls for help, but his father soon dies on the spot. After this tragedy, he becomes depressed and feels terrible for not saving his father. The next day, Yahai goes to the police station to file a report against Nasir. However, since there is no solid evidence and no witness, the authorities don't seem to trust him. That evening, Yahai looks at the amount of money he got after selling the house and decides to end his life, but he can't seem to make it happen. Just then, Yahai begins hallucinating and sees his father talking to him. The old man tells him that Yahai must avenge his death, to which he responds that he's terrified. However, his father inspires him to use his gifted mind to develop a robot. Now determined to exact revenge, Yahai uses his inheritance money to build a massive version of Mousa in the warehouse where he does his studies. He spends days held up in the warehouse, working relentlessly to bring his creation to life. Days later, Yahai sets out to seek his vengeance on Nasir and his gang. Eventually, the thugs begin to pursue Yahai into an abandoned building. Nasir then orders his henchmen to find him, but Yahai activates Mousa and effortlessly attacks the two men. When Nasir sees the gigantic robot, he tries to flee but is quickly caught and locked in a car. Mousa then blows up the car, killing Nasir in the process. Meanwhile, a man records the entire event, and the robot notices him, but somehow decides to let him go. Soon after, the man uploads the video on the internet, where it quickly goes viral as millions of people watch it. Elsewhere, a doctor examines a little boy who is Professor Ferris's son. The doctor claims that his son's illness is increasing and that he requires expensive surgery in Germany, which the professor cannot afford. However, he advises that a younger doctor can experiment on the kid, but Ferris refuses to take that risk. Just then, Ferris gets a call about a new assignment, so he storms out of the clinic. It turns out that the Egyptian government has determined that the robot situation is highly severe. Therefore, top military authorities and Professor Ferris are summoned to investigate. That night, Yahai receives a message from an internet friend who claims to know Yahai is the creator of Mousa. Soon his friend Rika visits him and explains that she knows Yahai built the robot because she discovered his sketchbook with Mousa's design. Trusting this girl, Yahai takes her to the secret room where Mousa is hidden. He then tells Rika that Mousa's purpose is not only vengeance, but also to bring down criminals who hurt society. Yahai reveals that he received a message from the dark web from a friend of his who is requesting that Yahai kill criminals who trade narcotics and guns and are also involved in child trafficking. Rika is intrigued by the idea as well, so she and Yahai form a team and begin tracking down other crooks. In the next scene, we see several billionaires gathered around, discussing their ideas to acquire the robot for financial gain. Samir al-Ashkar, a wealthy businessman who is also Miriam's father, devises a plot to set up a spy within the police force to obtain information. Days later, Yahai and Rika arrive at a big warehouse where criminals are holding children hostage for selling organs. Suddenly, Mousa rams a car into the wall and the criminals begin shooting. The robot proves to be bulletproof and quickly eliminates a portion of the gang. When a criminal shoots at a gasoline canister, it explodes and sends the robot flying. A criminal then attempts to fire a grenade at Mousa, but he avoids it and falls to the ground. Soon after, Mousa eventually kills all of the crooks and frees the innocent children. Meanwhile, the police receive a report about this and rush to the warehouse, where they discover 20 convicts hanging from the ceiling. Ferris then discovers another clue that Mousa is remotely controlled, and the controller must be near the crime scene for it to work. As days pass by, Yahai continues to use Mousa to fight crime, and the Egyptian people are amazed by Mousa's heroic deeds and regard the robot as an icon. One day, Rika leads Miriam to Yahai's laboratory, where she learns that he is the brains behind Mousa. However, Miriam becomes upset and claims that he is endangering his life by doing so. And after she leaves, Yahai becomes upset, but Rika cheers him up and says that they must hide the robot because they cannot trust Miriam. In the next scene, the authorities get some clues from a video of a car that appears to be hollow, which they believe was used to transport Mousa. They trace the license plate of the car to Yahai's father, who they eventually link to Nasir. The police then investigate Yahai's home and find nothing, but still, Yahai is taken to the police station for interrogation. However, since there is no evidence against him, the boy is released shortly after. Later, Ferris realizes that one of their team members is acting as a snitch and leaking information to outsiders. And after some digging, he discovers that Miriam's father, Samir, is also after Mousa and has placed a mole on their team. As a result, he heads to meet Samir with an officer. Ferris claims that he knows Yahai built the robot, and that if they work together, he will provide Mousa's design to him. When Samir asks why he would help him, Ferris responds that he wants the money to save his son's life. The following day, Ferris stages a terrorist attack on the train, and one of the guys live streams the entire hijacking on the internet. Yahai soon finds out about it and takes Mousa and Rika with him. While Mousa tries to help the passengers on board, Miriam is kidnapped by Ferris's men. Meanwhile, one of Ferris's men cuts Mousa's link with Yahai and begins cutting off its hands with a chainsaw. However, one of the passengers pushes him and Mousa reactivates. Eventually, Mousa defeats the crooks and serves as a bridge, allowing people to move from one carriage to another. In this way, Mousa saves the passengers, but its components are destroyed in the process. When Yahai returns home, he discovers that Miriam has been abducted. He then goes to Samir's mansion and informs him that Ferris has kidnapped his daughter. Samir then calls Ferris angrily and tells him that kidnapping his daughter was not a part of the plan. But Ferris, on the other hand, informs him that Yahai has 24 hours to bring Mousa or Miriam will be killed. Afterward, Yahai discovers Ferris's whereabouts and decides to visit without Mousa. First, he broadcasts a video to the world in which he explains the truth and reveals the location of the robot. After saying goodbye to his invention, Yahai heads to Ferris's hideout to surrender himself. After the police enter the premises, Mousa explodes, and Ferris receives news through the phone that he must now get Mousa's blueprint in exchange for his friend and lover. Meanwhile, Ferris demands Yahai design the blueprint in exchange for Miriam's life, but the boy warns that Samir will not let him off easy if he won't release his daughter. Realizing that Yahai is right, Ferris orders his men to release Miriam. Then, Yahai gets up and begins drawing, but we see him picking up poison placed in his shoe. Soon after, a car appears and Yahai's friend from the dark web arrives. He then gasses the entire area, and Ferris' troops begin to pass out. While Yahai continues writing down the formula, Ferris notices that something is wrong, so he escapes. Yahai then instantly erases the drawings on the wall, but he is unable to leave the building because the men are blocking the exit. So he calls Rika and urges her to drive away, but not before admitting his true feelings for Miriam. And finally, the building explodes, and Yahai is likely blown up within it. Elsewhere, Ferris is delayed at a police checkpoint and thinks he'll be caught either way. Resigning to his fate, he calls the doctor and ultimately accepts the experimental treatment from the young surgeon for his son. Soon, Ferris is arrested for his criminal actions, which resulted in the damage and death of many people, including Miriam's abduction. Meanwhile, Yahai's friend discovers him alive in the building and takes him outside. And finally, the movie comes to an end as a strange man searches the crime scene and discovers Mousa's complete mainframe on the ground.